50 years ago tonight. My friend's father spoke here at Mason Temple, Martin Luther King III. First of all, brother, God bless you.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Talk with Zernona Clayton and Taylor Branch the other day. They were on in studio talking about the documentary that premiered last night on HBO. And she told the story, which I had not heard before, that when your father left on that last trip here to Memphis, you all tackled him playfully, said, "Daddy, don't leave." You all sat out on the hood of the car and asked him not to leave. That happened. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
What I can tell you in terms of my own memory is I remember asking Dad not to go. And I remember him saying to me, "Don't worry, I'll be back." That is the extent of what I remember now. But I've heard that story certainly told many times. I think what is interesting is that as we later on learned and listened to his own message, he seemed to know that his time physically here was short. And so he envisioned something like this happening. In fact, in 1963, after President Kennedy was killed, he said to my mom, "That's unfortunately the way I'm going to go." So he predicted that as early as 1963, understanding the nature of this society.
Did that worry you, do you recall, as a child? Did you ever think about that?
I didn't. I think we were sheltered and protected, subconsciously, certainly. But consciously, I mean, Mom and Dad tried to protect us from any of the really major and difficult moments. We were at the Meritive March, for example. I was in St. Augustine and probably 64, 65 with Dad, which was a very difficult city, Florida. And but I don't think we ever chimed into the hostility, or maybe it was this was our life, so this is what we knew. We didn't know anything else. This is how we assumed it was normal. We were the first kids to integrate a school in Atlanta. Myself and my sister Yolanda and Dr. Abernathy's 3 older children, Ralph David Abernathy III, Donsley Abernathy, and Wendell Abernathy. And that was an interesting experience. Initially, there were some students who didn't accept us or didn't want to, and called us out of our name. But ultimately, most of the students came to accept us and began to see that we were just like them as other students. And in fact, several of them came to our home when Dad was killed to pay their respects, and that was very special to us.
I watched you in the march in Memphis after your dad passed. Your mom came and went forward with the march, and I'm watching you with her and just wondering, what is young Martin thinking? What's in his mind? Do you remember what you were feeling at that moment? Were you still in grief? Were you feeling, defiant and, wanting to continue, pick up where he left off? What were you thinking there?
I think more than anything else, I was just in pain. And in my mind, thinking that maybe this is a bad dream. It was a very bad dream. Not, maybe even in denial, even though this was 4 days, 4 or 5 days, 5 days after. But as I looked at it in retrospect, years later, I began to realize how important and significant it was that Mom chose to come and lead this march. And I started thinking about it. A man who had lost his wife may not have the strength to come and continue, or any other family, but Mother was very laserly focused, and she did come. And then the other thing that's very significant was in 2 months after his death, she and a team created the Martin Luther King Center to put a living memorial in place and an institution to honor him, it could have taken a couple of years just to deal with the bill of the plan. She immediately was able to. I mean, Mom was a giant, and I don't know that our society totally realizes that, but she worked with Stevie Wonder and many others, as you know, to get the King holiday. She went and visited every congressperson, all 535 of them. She was told no in her face by people like Barry Goldwater and others, and Jesse Helms. I believe Strom Thurmond, but I don't remember all of them.
Probably.
But that would be logical. But she endured anyway.
She did.
And so
I think people are getting it late, especially in this burgeoning women's movement. I've seen a lot more acknowledgement and appreciation for your mother. And the documentary, talked about how she took a public position against the war actually before your father did. So, I mean, and I think it's right. We have to think about the two of them together in the same context.
There's no question about that. And I'm certainly happy to see that happening. And as I think about this day and tomorrow as I'll be reflecting, I don't like the term bittersweet, but I have mixed emotions. And while I feel the pain of having lost a father, I intellectually understand that the nation, basically, my mom lost her husband and we lost our father, but the nation garnered an understanding of a message and a movement that has transformed all of the modern social change movements, helped them propel them. I mean, whether we're looking at Black Lives Matter, which is unfortunately still having to come together to address issues that you talk about every day on your show, and whether it's the Me Too movement, whether it is the Parkland movement, I shouldn't say Parkland, but I'd say the movement that the kids from Parkland, Florida, Jackson Stoneman, Douglas Stoneman High School are leading. And all these movements had to derive some inspiration from those who came before. And certainly I think in the King tradition. So that's what I'm excited about. I mean, because you have to find something to be excited about, the prospect of creating change in a very difficult nation. The other thing I know we've talked about from time to time, and you said, have asked me about the last 3 years of Dad's life, he was going through difficulty, not because he had lost his way, but because he lost support. He was the darling of the progressive and liberal movement until he came out against the war in Vietnam. And I was thinking about that speech beyond Vietnam, and what is so amazing is to capture at the essence of a moment where he said, I would be less than honest without acknowledging my own nation is the greatest purveyor of violence on the planet. Now, just take that statement alone and look at where we are today, with guns killing people every day. Something is misguided about our society that has created a climate for that to be acceptable. That is unacceptable, and we've got to change it.
Lastly, I know she's just a child, but I think she has it, Martin. Don't you think, Yolanda? I think she has it. I mean, and I know you don't want to put your daughter out there right now, but am I wrong?
No,
I saw it up there. I was there. Does she know? Is she conscious that she spoke to a larger crowd actually than her grandfather did in 1963?
I think she knows that. I think.
Maybe we shouldn't tell her, but.
The biggest issue is this is not an issue that she came to after Parkland. 2 years ago, we went to see President Obama in his last year in office in February. And although we'd been to the White House many times, we'd never actually seen the bust of Dad in the Oval Office. So we said to Yolanda, my wife and I, you need to come up with a question to ask the president. Her question to the president was, what are you going to do about these guns? 2 years ago. So she was focused on that issue. And my point is, she has a lot of compassion for the poor, for homeless. We did a couple of stops in January in Washington for the King holiday, and she was so intrigued because she has talked about, when she was 2 years old, building a mansion so that all the homeless can have somewhere to stay. So she has something, and she's very special, and my wife and I are just so proud of her.
Well, I commend you both.
We have to allow her to be a kid.
Of course. And I commend you both as parents. We were talking about on TV the other day, and I said, but her parents are great. And you mentioned your mother. Sometimes the mothers don't get the credit they deserve. And I said, Andrea is a partner in this, and they're doing a great job. It's selfish of me to talk about my emotions, but they're there. And I know, thinking about this, and like you said, the full range, the grace, sometimes the joy, the sadness. Memphis has always felt sad to me. But I thank you as always for sharing your emotions with us, your life. I've always said to people, you all heard me say on the radio, Martin's my man, and this was his father. I think about him as his father now because I know him. To others, he's Dr. King and Macro. But this is his dad, and I remember when you came and spoke in my daughter's school when she was just 10, and the children asked you about that experience. And so we thank you for sharing your life, your parents, your mother, your dad, because every moment that they were working with us, there was a moment that you may not have had them. But we thank you for that, man, and thank you for your strength, and God bless them. Martin Luther King III, everybody.